We're live. Okay.
Nice.
Just in time. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fashion Eéntre's first live talk show where we inspire innovation through conversation.
My name is Fernanda.
And I am Jacqueline. And today's special guest here today is Miss Rielle.
Hello.
Hey,
We are so excited
to have you.
I'm excited to be here. I'm very nervous.
Don't be. We're all nervous right now.
Yeah. So how have you been?
It's up and down. This whole situation, some days you'll be like, great, just enjoying your life, and other days it's like, what am I doing with my life? And just freaking out a little bit. So.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this up and down. What's your ups and what's your downs?
When I'm up, I can like create, and I'm working on projects, and just like working out and eating right and all of that. And when I have downs, I just like get panicky, like, oh my God, I'm here in Arizona and I'm supposed to be in LA, and
oh my God.
What am how am I furthering my career? Will I ever recover from this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how was that change from Arizona? How was that change from LA back to Arizona?
It was really weird because at first we just like we packed essentials and like we stopped in Phoenix. My sister has a house there that we were staying in while we were like making sure we weren't sick, and then we went back to our respective families. So now I'm in Tucson with the rest of my family.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, that's right.
Another Tucson. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so for starters, give a little bit of background for our audience members, because we are also launching this on other different platforms like YouTube and our website. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got interested or started into the fashion industry.
Well, I kind of fall into multiple roles. I consider myself a fine artist. I mainly do fashion photography as well as modeling, which is kind of a weird thing to do because I guess some people know me as a photographer, some people know me as a model, and only recently have those like two worlds start to come together because like I feel like when you tell somebody that you do everything, they're like, oh, so you do nothing seriously. And so I wish I could like separate these for a while, but now I pretty commonly just do both, and people will see both sides of it.
That seems to be the thing, the signature Arizona thing, where a lot of the creatives in our community happen to be eclectic, multiple skilled artists. I'm the makeup artist, model / stylist / whatever. Fernanda is artistic director, designer, and model, and then you, fashion photographer, stylist, influencer, fashion, model. Everyone's got so many different aspects to themselves. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how you're using your model experience to help your fashion photography platform and vice versa?
Okay. Well, I started out as a photographer and an artist, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I started out in that area, and I only recently got into modeling as a result of college, actually. And it was kind of an easy transition to start with because in college, I was learning how to direct people, like people who weren't models, for portraiture.
Right.
And so, like, the posing part kind of came naturally. And then vice versa, like expressions and stuff, like being in front of the camera has helped me kind of figure out what models need to know, when you're directing them or when you're telling them about a concept and this and that. It's hard to collaborate with people because, like nobody thinks the way you do. So that's been something that has been easier on my end during quarantine, doing these self-portraits, because I am on both sides, and so I know what the other side's thinking, but like being on either side and collaborating or working with somebody, you have to like let go of a little bit of your creative ideas, and like let their influence come in, and work with the bumps that kind of come up.
Right. And collaboration seems to be one of the key things to be able to succeed in this industry, but it's also one of the hardest things to do. If you can give a piece of advice to your fashion director self as a model, what would you say to help give more collaboration for the future projects?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Right? Because I know as a model, we struggle with, because as a fashion director too, we are supposed to take direction and be the muse and that blank slate. And yet we are constantly thinking of things of how to improve things. So it's how are you able to connect both sides of that? Because they're totally different.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to collaboration, it's hard because as much as like models are considered like that blank slate, and I think you should be able to transform into anything that is required. Like you also shouldn't be just a clothing hanger. Like
right
nowadays models are like more than that. And when I first started, I was like getting booked for my haircut, but now like people are like, oh, you express well, or like you can do this. And so being able to just like step into a role and like make it into your own is really important to collaboration. And also you just gotta like, my hardest part is just like biting the bullet and reaching out to people, because whenever I do, when you collaborate, you want to like be on equal footing. You want to be a benefit to them, and they need to be of benefit to you. And I always feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. Like, look at their photography, it's amazing. Or like, look at their makeup, like that's incredible. I could never work with them, So that ends up being like the toughest part for me when it comes to collaborating, is like you just gotta like reach out, and if they say no, like no big deal.
I know.
Exactly.
And you never know. The worst they can say is no, right?
Exactly.
No, and move on.
So, what drew you first to fashion photography?
So in college, I was studying fine art photography, and I wanted to be an artist, like exhibiting in. Ooh, sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah, I wanted to like exhibit in galleries and like, be part of that like posh society, like talking about the state of the world, and it's like kind of ridiculous, but like, I loved it because their art always has something to say beyond just like aesthetics, And that's kind of where I started, but I found that when I was making work like that, it was not nice to look at. Like, it was just ugly. I wasn't thinking about the aesthetics because I was so focused on the concept. And when I started doing fashion photography with models and stuff, because I wanted more experienced models, I found that I was focusing on aesthetics and I really liked the way it looked. But I could also pull in like the ideas that I had from my conceptual work. And, like ideally, like I don't want to just take a pretty picture, although I do it plenty of times, but I want to like make work that like tells a story or goes beyond that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like even your Instagram posts, the ones that you have been doing lately, they actually tell a story. Like there's it gives you, even if you're not saying anything within the caption or anything, it gives you a vibe of what is going on. For example, the one where you have, where you're all in yellow and you have like some sort of mask. It looks like you have like a mask. It gives you like a story of kind of COVID. A feeling of what COVID is, what's going on, and all that.
Tell us a little
It's
bit
very
about
interesting.
that picture.
Yeah, is that the one in the hazmat suit?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's the one.
That was that's a fun one. The hazmat suits I've had them for a couple years now, and I really like using them in my work because they like just tell you that something's off, like something's wrong with the environment that this person is in. And so, yeah, I have it in my closet right now, my yellow hazmat suit, and I really wanted to do something that was, yeah, like it's weird how fashion is kind of like changing. Designers are putting out like face masks and their own designs.
Exactly.
And I find that so interesting. Like
Everyone's
I've been making face
right
masks,
now.
but not like nothing crazy, but like it's interesting to see how fashion is changing according to what we need. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I thought I'd like put together that little color story.
That's a great way of putting it, of how fashion is changing to what we need. I feel like there's so much gaps that need filling. As a creative, what other things are you able to see that people need through your stories or through your platform?
Well, when it comes to like what I want to talk about, like it's always like social issues and like things that we're going through. Like art is just an expression of life and it mimics it. And like I want to talk about what we're going through, even though like I'm not just like I'm not documenting it like a photo message. I'm kind of like taking my own spin on it, like being playful with it. Because I feel like that connects with people a lot easier. Like when they see a photo that they like and they think is fun, like they look at it and they want to look at it. And then that's where you have the ability to actually like communicate with someone. Like, so when I first started, not when I first started, like when I was a teenager, I used to think, like, I'm just not into politics. It's toxic. I'm not interested. And I thought that was like my mature way of like getting around it. And what I realized is that I had the privilege not to care about politics because I was lucky enough that it wasn't a life or death situation for me, that it didn't affect me if something went wrong. I'm like, yeah, like I have a lot of privilege. And I realized that my interest in avoiding politics was just like my ability to avoid it.
That's super interesting. That is so important.
It kind of went the opposite direction once I realized that. I kind of became like an SJW on Facebook, like starting arguments with people in comment sections. It's so toxic, just like yelling at people over the internet. And like obviously like a man, like what does my dad say? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Like, like yelling at someone, you're not gonna like show them a different way of life. It was just like toxicity coming around, and I realized that like I had no effect on anybody. And so kind of where my work has come into is having I want my images to be read multiple ways, and I want them to kind of talk about these issues, but in a playful way. Because like people open up when there's humor, when there's fun, and like when you're not trying to shove an opinion down someone's throat. And so like I like my images to be open to interpretation, but like really make you like wonder about like what's kind of going on, how you feel about it, and like how those things change.
So go for it.
So now I got curious, like how did you get into fashion photography specifically? Like how did you start that?
Because you said fine art, but
yeah.
Like what drew you into it?
When I was in college, I was, studying my fine art, and people needed models for their projects. So I actually got into fashion photography as a result of starting modeling.
Okay.
yeah, I was like doing that for them, and then I decided to just try a runway show one time, you know, and ended up meeting a lot of awesome people. Like everyone was so friendly, like, and
It's
suddenly they
always
were
the
sending me like,
people.
oh, there's
Yeah.
another runway show on this day, and like you should come to this event. And
Right.
I fell into it because of the community, and then those
Mhm.
people were doing photo shoots and stuff, and I was like, you know, I could do that. And, you know, and I can make them look good. And,
Mhm.
you know, it kind of like bounced back and forth between like just trying to take pretty pictures of like my model friends and then like also still having this desire to do fine art. And so
Mhm.
they kind of came together and I was like, okay, I'm going to photograph you, but I'm also going to make you like be in this hazmat suit and clean plastic palm tree while this other chick is just like lounging in the desert like an ocean
Right.
reporter, you know, like
Yeah.
it kind
I
of came into
remember
something.
that. That was a fun one with all the
Yeah,
pink. That was a
that's one I'm
super
still
fun
working
shoot.
on.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, okay, that's really interesting because it seems a lot of people are having trouble with the whole fine art being fashion, or is fine art not fashion? What do you think? Because I know when you combine the two, it can be a little bit off-putting to some, and then it can be very beautiful for a lot of people. You seem to bring in both of it together.
Yeah, it's something I struggled with a lot because when I first started fashion photography, um, my fine art college kind of like was not interested. You know, they're like, oh, fashion, anyone can do that. You just learn the settings, you know how to make people look pretty, and there it is.
Right.
You know, what's
Mhm.
interesting is the idea behind it. And so I felt kind of embarrassed
Mm.
talking to them about it because I was like, oh, I'm doing this thing that's just pretty and it's like not interesting. And I definitely think that's common in the
Mhm.
fine art world to kind of like not be interested in fashion and vice versa because fashion um I don't know, a
All
lot
about
of
the
what's
clothes and the
considered like
designers.
It's
Yeah.
like all superficial, kind of.
yeah, that's exactly how fine art people view fashion,
Mhm.
you know? And
Yeah.
Funny.
like fashion obviously has like influence in the world, you know, like
Mhm.
it draws from political and social things, like
Yeah,
you can read it
exactly.
like a history book. And so I think it's necessary to bring them together. But to me, fine art is like an idea. There's like an idea behind the image beyond just like, oh, I want to make this look this way, you know?
Mhm.
And like you leave it pretty broad because in art history, every time people try to like draw a straight definition in the word art or fine art, like someone finds a way to turn it over, and that's kind of like the the repeated cycle, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, so then why don't you break down to our audience, what does fine art mean to you? What is your interpretation of it, and how are you using your photography to show that?
hmm To me, fine art is about having a conversation. Like there are fine artists who will like make a work that tells you how to feel, but like for me, it's like you want to have a discussion about an idea that's bigger, that's beyond you, you know? Like with that plastic beach image,
Mhm.
um, what what I thought was so important about it was I actually came into it thinking like, okay, this is about the environment and like there's this woman who's obviously like not helping the environment, like out there
Mm-hmm.
sunbathing even though there's no water left and she has to put up plastic trees because no trees can survive anymore. You know, and
Right.
that was my idea. And like she's got
Mhm.
servants that like are cleaning the tree and they're just like nothing to her. And that was my idea. And then I showed it to a friend of mine and
Mhm.
he's a philosophy major and it's just like so funny to see how his opinion came in. He looked at it and he's like, oh, that's really interesting because you can see these two people on either side of her are like afraid of their environment, but she's chosen to embrace it, you know?
Oh,
And that just like
Okay.
interesting.
completely blew my mind.
That is
And
so interesting.
that's what I really want. I think I think when you can do something when you can do fine art right, like it's more
Mhm.
about like conversation, and neither side is wrong, but you can see both sides.
Right.
And like, I just happened to fall into that image by accident, you know, with that like dual interpretation. But like, ideally, I would want to be able to do that with every image I make, you know. So that's what I'm kind of like going towards.
Well, it seems to be that you're very successful at hitting it every time, especially with being published in multiple magazines. You've got Italian Vogue stamp on your portfolio now. How about, talk to me a little bit about your Asian background, because I know, coming from being half Asian myself, the fashion world is not quite embraced by our our roots, but especially fine art. How are you able to, you know, blend and, you know, kind of marry all of that together?
Well, I guess so. My family has been a little more accepting of it, I guess. My great uncle was a fashion photographer for Tony's magazines.
Wow.
And while I was like I took the LSAT for law school, you know, like I did those things, but my mom was still like pretty accepting of like me getting an art degree. And she just wanted me to have a backup plan, you know, just be safe.
Backup plan, yep.
That's with all arts.
Yeah, this takes so much time. Like, if you don't go at it at full speed, like, it won't work, you know?
Right.
And when it comes to, like, my Asian background, I actually think it helped a lot because my families on either side are just completely different. And
that's what I've noticed on your Instagram. You said you're half Taiwanese and half Swedish, and I was like, whoa,
yeah,
that is so different.
Yeah, it's very different.
Exactly.
And so, like, the way my family acts when I'm with either side, or like the way they interact together, I think I just saw a lot of like weird social things happen. Like, oh, you can do this around this family member, but you can't do it with that one. And you know, like my Taiwanese grandma is like, she is so important to me, but like, I've never said I love you because that's just not how it works.
That's
you know, it's just like
do it.
weird things, and I think those all like influence the way I talk about art, like the images that I formulate, like what I question, all has to do with like the differences I've seen. And like, so that's how I've really kind of learned to make it my own, is you got to find what is personal to you and like bring that into the world, because that's not what other people have to work with. You know, you can like make fashion images and like just do what you see, but when you bring in like your own experiences and stuff, that's when you start to like do things that like pique people's interest.
True, because you're telling a story from your perspective. I feel that's what matters a lot of times.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing during quarantine too, is like I have like, you know, all those images, everything that inspires me saved, and I'm like, okay, what about this that like interests me? And I'm like, oh, well, it has to do with the lighting or the angle, and I'm like, okay, but then I have to figure out like what I want to do with it, because like, okay, so what's interesting me today? Like bananas. We'll do like bananas and that, and like figure out a conversation to have. I'm actually shooting with my family tonight. They're gonna help me with a couple photos. I'm gonna go fishing in my swimming pool with my dad. He's gonna wear like a fisher hat and everything. We have a fishing pole that I don't think he's ever used. And I'm gonna be like in my fashion stuff, and we're just gonna have fun with it. You know, it's like
super fun.
It sounds really interesting.
Yeah. I love that.
Like a lot of it is like
featured here and there.
It's nice to have them here and to be able to interact with them before I have to go back to LA. And so I'm trying to like integrate them into my images as much as possible. Like, even if it's just behind the scenes, like my dad spraying the hose for my son's shower.
Oh yeah. That was a very cool photo shoot too. And I really like that you gave like the behind the scenes, like, oh, and this is how it became the photo. This is the person that helped me.
I mean, to me, like, I think the behind the scenes is actually like the final piece of work and not the actual photos, because it was like that's what that shoot was to me. It was like me, and I was trying to get my sister to help out with the photo shoot because I'm like in my mom's swimsuit and I'm like, this is kind of weird, but my sister was busy, and so I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna ask my dad. And you know, it just became like such a funny interaction. But to me, it's like more about that interaction.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. So that's how you can bring your family into your work and your art. Super cool. So as a fashion photographer during Corona, you know, the COVID-19, everyone has been pivoting. Like you mentioned earlier, designers have been starting to make masks, and you have also been doing Zoom photo shoots. What is that like? Will you keep pursuing that?
It's fun, honestly. It's something I could see myself like still doing after quarantine, because like just slip in a quick photo shoot here. And what I like is I can shoot with people overseas.
Yes, that is the coolest thing ever.
What? This is great. I haven't done it yet. I haven't reached out to models over there. I've been like just working every day and then like photo shoots whenever I'm not. So I haven't reached out to anyone, but like what a great opportunity we have. And like it's not that we didn't have this ability beforehand, but nobody was willing to do it because we weren't in this situation. And so as unfortunate as this like as COVID-19 is right now, it's interesting to see how people are learning to adapt and just try new things because we're in a completely unprecedented situation.
Exactly. And then from the other side, as a model, have you done Zoom shoots, photo shoots?
I have.
How is that like?
How is that like?
It's definitely weird because when you do an online photo shoot, you can't like just move through your poses the way you normally do. Like you gotta hold still so that the pixels can catch up and they can get a good quality image, you know? It's so difficult, you know, and I really feel for the models I photograph because of that, because I'll be like, okay, wait, hold it. And you know, I know that I'm throwing them off. And also they have to do all the work. I'm telling them what angle to set up. They have to set it up. They have to get into position and pose. I'm just sitting there and I like hit screenshot when the time's right. You know, it's been weird, but like forces you to work on your directing. It forces you to like think, how do I want this image to look, instead of just like finding it through my view camera, you know?
Right.
Interesting.
I mean, you're still looking through a screen, so that's interesting too.
Yeah.
But I love how this is forcing models, or actually not forcing models to take direction, but more like showing people that models can put together their own photo shoot.
It's kind of like that thing in Arizona, you know, where everybody does everything. We're in a situation where that kind of has to happen now, you know?
Right.
I gotta be photographer and model in order to take my self-portraits. And, you know, the people I photograph, they have to be stylist, makeup artist, model, you know, like, it's this thing that like was kind of like, I don't want to say looked down on, but I definitely feel like there was kind of a stigma behind like, oh, I can model and I can also do my own shoot and I'll bring my own clothes. It's like, oh, that's not like as legitimate as if you have a whole team. You know, it's suddenly legitimized, and that's kind of cool.
That is super cool. That's a really interesting way of thinking about it, because I am so used to doing everything by myself, but I really appreciate a team too. If you can give advice to our Arizona community, because you coming in from LA, now that you've experienced the hustle life, what would you tell them? And especially either as models or fashion photographers, what would you tell them to help them in the future, especially after COVID-19?
Well, I think there's a lot that you can do in quarantine. You can, you know, even if it's just like selfies on your phone, like magazines are publishing that crap now, you know? Like we've just had a completely upturn. I see agencies posting FaceTime shoots in their models' books. You know, like we're in a completely new place for you to experiment and try things. And so that's what you really need to be doing. Half of my shoots don't turn out. They're awful. You know, like just because like it's so, like I'll take a bunch of photos and like the focus is off and just like a little bit in all of them because like it's just so difficult to set up by yourself, you know, and or like the lighting will be off or I didn't notice something because I'm not behind the camera as the photo's being taken. And that's like it's totally fine because it's just me, you know, and I feel like everybody should be kind of doing that because it's like it's just you. You have nothing to lose. Like if there's any time to like be working through the anxiety, now is the time. And like just try something that you haven't done before and try something that you haven't seen anyone else do. When it comes to because you can like put together a new portfolio right now with just yourself, you know.
Very true.
Play around with it. Like this is a great time to like get everything organized. And when it comes to getting back out there once all of this is over, a lot of business just comes down to knowing people. And you can be a great artist on your own. And I can take all the photos I want on my own. But I won't actually get anywhere unless I bite the bullet and start reaching out to people again. And I start making work with other people, even if you have to let go of some of that creativity, you know, to let someone else's in, you gotta work with other people and see what you can create together. It can give you so many more layers to your work. So like, why wouldn't you? You know, and reach out to everybody. Doesn't matter like what nose you get. Like, who cares? Like, and take good digitals because
take good digitals.
If you have no portfolio, send someone your digis and like you can start from there.
Right. You know? 100%.
So what is your bouncing off of that, what would your dream shoot be? Dream photo shoot or dream campaign? Like after COVID or maybe even right now, if you would want to message someone, who would you want to photograph or who would you like to model for?
So it's kind of interesting because brands are actually reaching out to models to do like self shoots right now. And so I've been thinking about that. Like, should I just like reach out to people? And if you're like, you definitely should. I haven't yet because I don't have the guts to, but like you definitely should. Just reach out to people, see who you can talk to, like who will like use you. But my dream shoot, honestly, what I would love to do is like book any big brand and like, you know, just give them a great shoot, but then like turn around and shoot like a nobody designer and do something absolutely crazy and like just be like, what is going on here? You know, like who is this person? You know, what is this project? You know, right after. Like to me, it's the shoot you do after your big break that is like what matters because that's you. You know, you can get your big break and that's amazing and like really awesome. But like what you do after that, like that to me is like your actual work, you know? True. So I'm excited for the shoot after.
Super good idea. Look forward to the opportunity after.
So brands, I understand that brands are reaching out and everything. So they're kind of gaining influencers, a little bit of gaining influencers. So talking about the influencer culture, and COVID-19 has truly changed the way people see celebrities and influencers and their way of living and their behaviors. So as someone who is known as an influencer yourself, what are your thoughts about it, about the influencer culture? And how do you think they can adapt?
It's kind of funny, like having that title, Influencer of the Year, because like on any other standard, like I loved the competition and like I felt like I put my all into it. But like when it comes to just like a follower count, I don't even compare. You know, I don't compare to these like billion follower accounts that like they put out stuff all the time that just has to do with different brands.
Right.
And but like I have had like a small scale version of that where, you know, like local designers like Nazila Couture, tie-dye company, you know, Bunny Garrett, like so many designer friends, you know, they just like want me to shoot their stuff. And like Nazila sent me some outfits to just shoot in during quarantine, same with tie-dye. You know, like I've gotten stuff like that, and it's interesting because you can absolutely work that way. And I think brands are realizing that they need to do it because they can't just go 6 months without any kind of
Exactly. They need content.
Yeah. But the influencer aspect, I think they're doing like just fine in all of this because their content was meant to like connect to you on a personal level already. So it was already supposed to be like more like casual, not like you know, $100,000 fashion photographer every time. You know, it was already meant to connect on this level. So I feel like influencers are doing great right now. And models are actually starting to have to move into that. Like not just their big editorials, they have to start to work on a more casual level.
I think that's super interesting because, you know, there's been a lot of articles like Business of Fashion posting, is this the end of influencer culture? You know, because we had celebrities, oh, I don't know, like Ellen just completely tanking with the most benign type of comments. But in the fashion industry, it seems like the models are becoming the new influencers.
That's, you know, that's completely true. I hadn't thought of that because like now that these celebrities are taking on kind of this influencer role, you know, being stuck at home but still like receiving product and casual shoots, I definitely see influencers like starting to get pushed out.
Right.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. I guess what that ends up coming down to is like, what do you put out? Like, what's the quality of your content? You know,
Exactly.
because they already have like a name, something like beyond this thing. But they also have something to go back to once all of this is over. Like, I feel like eventually, and I could be completely wrong, like, they're going to exit the scene, you know, and we will still have those influencers. Huh. I hadn't thought about that.
Or maybe the influencer is changing towards modeling, more like type of supermodels kind of thing. Perhaps.
Instagram models and
yeah. Do you think the supermodels will be back? Is that a thing? Is that going to happen again?
So it's kind of an interesting thing because as much as we see like body positive and alternative model culture like popular on social media, and take this with a grain of salt. I'm unsigned, like out in LA, like, but what I've seen is that although they do have a lot of these agencies who will now take plus size, now take small models, or what do they call them? Is it small models?
Petite models.
I think they call them small instead of petite for like
interesting.
Is what they refer to them as now.
Really?
But what I see happening is like while certain agencies will have those models, it's still very much like you need to be tall and like they still have the model diet. And as popular as body positivity is, I still see a lot of resistance from brands and resistance from agencies even. Like still requiring a certain height if you come to a walk-in, or a lot of what are they called, open castings they still have those like requirements, you know, they're not open to all sizes and stuff, and so that's been kind of interesting.
Ages, whatever.
Because I thought as soon as I got to LA, like everything was fine and dandy. Like, oh yeah, they're ahead of the curve. They know what's going on. Like they have plus size models, they have short models, they got everything. And it's still like I still see very much like no tattoos, no this, no that. And while brands will like break it sometimes, it's not consistent.
It's still like very traditional in a way.
Yeah, they still like what I see is they pick and choose, like, okay, this campaign is going to be with alternative models, and like the rest of their campaigns are right there. But like every once in a while they have like an alternative to show that it's kind of like their token. you know?
Right.
But
Exactly.
still, I'm unsigned. Take this with a grain of salt. Like, I can't really, like, speak for the industry, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's
we are,
true.
yeah. So
Oh,
we
really
are running
quickly.
out of time, actually. Sorry.
We could keep going on.
Exactly. But it was such a lovely time, like just talking with you. It was so nice to have you. I was really excited. We were both very excited to have you.
I
And
know.
thank you again for being with us on our very first podcast episode.
And
Thank
really
you for
quickly,
thinking
before
of
we
me. Also, like, congratulations, you guys. Like, this is quite a feat.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yay. We were so nervous getting this off the ground, and we just
Exactly.
haven't slept in days. But
It's
we
been
really
weeks
wanted to
without sleeping.
highlight, yeah. We really wanted to highlight voices like yours because, you know, yours is unique. You do it all. But really quickly, before we leave, before we wrap up, if you can tell our audience just one more thing, because we've been across the board. We went through influencer culture, we went through model culture, fashion photography, your creative process during COVID-19. Since now that we've had this conversation, if you can give advice to the influencers now, or even our models, what can they do to get ahead of the game? And if even brands, like if you're talking to brands right now, what can you say to be able to help bridge that gap that we've mentioned, like the whole diversity thing?
I think that comes down to, like, business is you gotta know how to sell yourself. And I know a great photographer who kind of, hold on, let me see if I can find her because I don't remember her last name. Beatrice Valim. Yeah. So on Instagram, Picasso, she fell into, like, something really interesting because she's a great fashion photographer, but she started training her niece to do photography during quarantine, and she calls her niece Casso. And they did, like, just for fun, they did a Nike shoot, posted it on Twitter, and Nike's like, hey, what can we do to help? And kind of the same as what happened with, like, me and my dad on TikTok with that, like, behind the scenes videos. Like, it's something different that people haven't seen, and that's what became interesting. Like, you just gotta find, like, your own thing to do. Like, she has her niece, I have my dad, you know, like, you find your own way to,
your
like,
team.
Yeah.
Find your team.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
You can do whatever you want.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming along and lending your time to us.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you said to look for the opportunity after the big opportunity. I think that's my biggest takeaway from you, especially because that is a new way of thinking that people really need to hear now.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This was fun. It was very nerve-wracking, but we survived.
Tell us about it.
All right.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. If you would like to watch more of this, or if you happen to miss this episode, we will be uploading this in our YouTube channel, which is coming very soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.